Hello everyone, and welcome back to Dragalia Foundry. Today's video is my review of the Ambitions in Bloom Summon Showcase, which lasts until June 12th. This showcase focuses on the flame element, and it offers increased rates for some exciting new and old featured adventurers and dragons. I'll analyze them all in today's video, plus I'll briefly discuss the 2 new Wyrmprints that were also added. Despite some brand new alts, please note that this showcase is not seasonal or limited time. Everything here will be part of the normal summoning pool going forward. The new prints aren't limited either. Timestamps are on screen now if you wish to skip ahead. Otherwise, let's get started with Wyrmprints. Wyrmprints are no longer part of the summoning pool and won't affect my verdict on the showcase as a whole. But since the trend so far is to release new Wyrmprints alongside new banners, I will cover them here. In this case, both prints were quite interesting, with one of them having lots of potential to alter the meta. First up, we have that more influential print, Beauty's Secret. This 4-star print grants up to 10% strength when the user's HP is above 70%, and, more importantly, it provides 50% burn res as its second ability. This print is perfect to shore up adventurers with only partial burn res to make them suitable for High Brunhilde while providing a decent strength boost. Examples include Elisanne, Celiera, Rex, Zardin, Wake, and Jacob. Burn res isn't absolutely necessary to succeed in that fight, but it is extremely helpful, especially in public lobbies. Previously, the only alternative print which gave 50% burn res was Fireside Gathering, whose second ability is flame res of 8%. Beauty's Secret thus provides a more offense-oriented option at the very least. But the implications don't end there. Far more impactful is that those 2 prints can be used together to give any adventurer 100% burn res, even if they have 0 built in. This means stun res units like Dragonyule Cleo or the new Nurse Aeleen can enter High Brunhilde's trial with no fear of burning at all, making them much easier to pilot and to heal. The one caveat is that doing this means your unit won't be able to equip the High Dragon Res Wyrmprint Volcanic Queen, so you may have to compensate for this through other equipment. Water has a series of void weapons with full HP equals defense, which should do the trick, especially when paired with a mixed HP and strength dragon like Poliahu, Poseidon, High Mercury, or even Simurgh for Nurse Aeleen. Lance and Axe co-abilities can also help with survival in the absence of a void weapon. For right now, only a full HP equals defense Lance, Dagger, Staff, and Blade are available. But once this cycle expands during a future Void update, even more units will be able to easily take advantage of this print combo. Perhaps by then we'll even see Xander and Laranoa become more common in HBH as a result. They're already awesome when running with a Thaniel who knows how to heal burnables. Maybe this new Wyrmprint will eventually mean more people get to try them out. Our second new Wyrmprint from this update was Study Rabbits. This one seems less significant to me, but it is rather powerful. Study Rabbits is a 5-star which grants 13% defense while HP is above 70% and 8% HP all the time. This is the first time we've seen a stat such as HP or Strength appear with no conditions on a Wyrmprint, so that alone is noteworthy. The amount of bulk this print grants under a variety of circumstances is pretty unprecedented too. It can't completely substitute for, say, the High Dragon Res Wyrmprint, but it does come close. It's typically good enough to do so on melee units. Study Rabbits is such a defensive Wyrmprint, however, that it's difficult to recommend in a meta defined by offense. What I mean by this is that, as of now, the game's existing quests favor damage output. This is because most are timed and endeavors exist for things like speed clears. There is no real survival-focused mode, and that means Study Rabbits doesn't really have a home in the current environment. Maybe this will change with the Mercurial Gauntlet, but I would not suggest buying this print just yet. Its one major use I can think of for now is to ease Void auto battles or High Dragon solos for extremely late game players. It also has a niche with meme off-element clears of the High Dragon trials. Ultimately though, I see Beauty's Secret as the more influential of these two prints. Still, only buy it if you specifically want to take a unit without 100% burn res into High Brunhilde and have a plan to do so. Otherwise, your Eldwater is better saved for future prints, existing staples, or adventure enhancement. That's all I want to say about the Wyrmprint shop, so now let's move on to the banner specifically, starting with dragons. We'll begin with the 4-star focus. It's, as usual, an existing dragon, Ifrit. Ifrit is one of the better 4-star dragons since its ability increases strength for flame adventurers. If you've never pulled one before, this showcase presents a good opportunity to do so. Once again, context matters here. Ifrit is relatively good compared to other 4-star dragons, in part because High Midgard Stormer is the easiest high dragon trial. If you have to choose which trials to use a 4-star dragon for and which trials to use a 5-star dragon for, well, a 4-star is more than enough for HMS. As a bonus, Ifrit is solid for the current raid where extra copies can help outfit your team's backliners. Ifrit will never be as good as a Max Unbound Prometheus, Cerberus, or Agni. Those 5-star dragons outclass Ifrit at that point since they provide more strength. Still, he's good enough. If your resources are limited because you're free to play or a low spender, I'd suggest you invest into one Ifrit by max unbinding it with Moonlight Stones. Then you can save your Sunlight Stones for strength dragons of the wind, shadow, and light elements, since the corresponding high dragons are or may be more demanding. And with that advice, well, it's going to be a bit tough for the new 5-star flame dragon to impress. No matter how good she is, there's just not a need for an exceptionally strong flame dragon right now. Kono Hanasakuya is her name, and she provides a previously unseen aura, strength, and skill damage. This continues a trend we've seen lately of newer dragons mixing it up with their ability combinations. Kono Hanasakuya is surprisingly tricky to evaluate, so thank you to everyone on the Discord, especially Volcarona, for helping me think through this across many different conversations. The TLDR is that she is an excellent dragon for adventurers with multiple attacking skills, especially if those skills are quick to charge and they represent a large chunk of that unit's overall damage output. This makes her fantastic for sword units like Yuden, Marth, and Serena, for example. Other units who derive a lot more of their damage from skills, even if they lack multiple attacking skills, can also use her well. Cerise fits into this category. If a unit has 2 to 3 attacking skills, including their first skill, then chances are Kono Hanasakuya will be, at a minimum, very good for them, but not necessarily guaranteed to be optimal. Unfortunately, the exact cutoffs between her and 60% strength dragons like Cerberus and Agni are hard to summarize. This depends not just on the specific adventurer, but also the Wyrmprint set you're using. From the calculations we ran, it looks like the damage edge for Kono Hanasakuya is around 10% at most. Meanwhile, she is considerably weaker on units who lack attacking skills. Support units like Sinoa and healers like Valentine's Hildegard will likely prefer pure strength dragons or a mixed dragon like HBH. The other point to consider with Kono Hanasakuya is how she can affect build decisions. Damage in Dragalia Lost is calculated by multiplying damage modifiers in various categories together. For instance, strength times skill damage times punishers, etc. To maximize a formula like this, it helps to diversify the modifiers since things within a category get added up, while things across categories are multiplied. Kono Hanasakuya already provides a lot of skill damage on her own, but provides less strength. Due to this, in comparison to Cerberus and Agni, Kono Hanasakuya benefits slightly less from skill damage Wyrmprints and adventurer passives, but benefits a lot more from strength Wyrmprints and passives. We could spend even more time on the nuances here to discuss things like how the wand's co-ability works and so on, but in the interest of time, I'll just say this. Kono Hanasakuya is a very good dragon, but I don't think she ultimately surpasses Cerberus as the best flame dragon to invest in with Sunlight Stones. She can provide a slight edge to damage output for some adventurers, but not all. Meanwhile, Cerberus is going to be fantastic for everyone, not to mention her debuff skill is perfect in a variety of scenarios. It's great for raids, for instance, and for epithet speed clears in certain void battles. All said, though, both dragons on this showcase are decent pickups. If you lack an Efreet or haven't fully unbound yours yet, and you're interested in the adventurers here too, you might want to summon. Let's begin discussing those adventurers now. As usual, there are 2 featured 4 stars and 2 featured 5 stars. If any of these units are a must-have for you, release banners do tend to be the best time to try and snipe them, so do keep that in mind. Otherwise, let's continue our analysis. We'll begin with the new 4-star sword unit, Serena. She's another flame element sword, the 7th in the game, and her stats skew toward HP. Serena finally makes a playable appearance after showing up on the Give Me Your Wounded Wyrmprint during Dragalia Lost launch last year. She's absolutely adorable, and her design is very cohesive too. Serena's kit is centered around 3 things: skill damage, combos, and critical hits. She has 2 solid attacking skills, the first of which, Assault Flame, boosts her own critical rate temporarily. This synergizes with Serena's brand new Barrage abilities, which reward her combo performance with enhanced stats. Barrage Obliteration boosts her critical damage by 6% for every 20 hit combo, up to 3 times a quest. In total, you can stack 18% critical damage through this ability, built up over time. Barrage Devastation, meanwhile, can only be unlocked if Serena is promoted to a 5-star. This works similarly, except it boosts critical rate. It provides 3% for every 30 hit combo up to 3 times, so 9% total in a given quest. While her Assault Flame buff is up, this means Serena can reach a critical rate of 21% before Wyrmprints. I think the new Barrage series of abilities is excellent. These reward skilled play, but aren't as demanding as Flurry abilities, since once you pull off a long combo string once, you're set for the rest of the match. If you can maintain a 90 hit combo even once in a match, your Serena will be fully buffed going forward. And even if you do get interrupted along the way, it's likely you've still gotten several permanent buffs already, and you can begin a new combo to get the remaining ones. These abilities would be even better on daggers or ranged units who can easily rack up combos, but I still think they're powerful here. Serena's final ability is Stun Res of 100%, which is also great for her. It means she's a reasonable choice for this raid event, although I do think Yuden is better due to his debuff and Dragon's Claws, but more importantly, it gives her an easy time against endgame content like High Midgard Sormer. Even though HMS is more accessible than it once was, it still remains as one of the hardest win challenges for now. Serena does have some tough competition though. Marth is likely the strongest flame sword, and he's got the same resistance as Serena, not to mention access to powerful team-wide buffs. Yuden is also a decent alternative with stun res, plus he's available to everyone. As mentioned before, he's likely better for raids than Serena is, and he's perfectly viable for HMS too. Fortunately, these two are Serena's main competition. Marty is slightly weaker than her, but he has his own niche of providing shields. Valentine's Orion has Curse Res, which is unique, and Carl and Naveed both have Sleep Res and Slayer's Strength, making them best for Imperial Onslaught and Void Zephyr, rather than High Midgard Sormer like Serena. Honestly, I really like Serena. Unfortunately though, from a strict gameplay standpoint, I would never recommend you promote her over Yuden. Yuden is better for raids and sufficient for HMS, plus he'll give you access to a 15% player EXP passive ability when promoted, ideal for grinding daily content. With that disclaimer, if you do decide to promote Serena, do so because she's a wonderful and precious unit who you love. At that point, her relatively good gameplay performance will be the cherry on top. If you do decide to take Serena to her full potential, let's talk build ideas for her. For dragons, Cerberus and Konohana Sakuya are the standouts as discussed at length before. Efreet is fine as a 4-star that's easy to max unbind. Agni is almost identical to Cerberus if max unbound, just with a worse skill and animations, and Prometheus is okay too, allowing you to comfortably run 2 attacking prints with relatively low investment into things like facility levels, weapon unbinds, and co-ability upgrades. For weapons, Levitain is the best core option for Serena. It grants her the most stats possible and a 3rd attacking skill. The skill is also more powerful and faster to charge than the skill on the 4-star Flame Sword Crimson Cry. If you do not wish to invest in a core weapon for Serena, you could use the void weapon Inferno Apogee instead, but that's only at its most effective against High Midgard Sormer. Next, let's talk Wyrmprints. With 3 attacking skills, Serena wants more skill damage regardless of Dragon. The Shining Overlord and Resounding Rendition are both great picks. As a 2nd print, Serena would benefit most from Flash of Genius. Against High Midgard Sormer, the wind res on this print is sufficient to allow her to survive the HP check with enough investment, and its Flurry Strength rewards combos with a 20% strength boost. Excellent for Serena, especially with Kono Hanasakaya equipped. Finally, let's discuss teammates. With skill damage being a big part of her game plan, Serena would love a wand teammate like Student Maribelle, who has the skill damage co-ability. A critical rates co-ability would also work very well for Serena, but there are no stun res flame daggers. Instead, I like Gala Cerise as a teammate since her skill haste can allow Serena to continue comboing off with her skills rapidly. Even a low-level skill haste ability would help Serena access her 3rd skill on Levitain slightly faster. And, well, that's all I have to say about Serena. She's a cute and strong unit with a very cohesive kit and a clear game plan. Unfortunately for her, she enters into a very saturated and competitive pool. Still, I can see her being an instant favorite for many people, myself included. She's just so darn endearing. Let's move on to our next unit though, this one an alt of an existing 4-star. Yup, I'm talking about Nurse Aeleen. She's the alt I never knew I wanted, but I have to say, Aeleen is looking good. And of course, I mean that purely from a wholesome gameplay standpoint. You see, Aeleen is one of very few healers endowed with the ability to grant HP regen on her primary skill, Medicinal Cure. Regen is superb for healers since it future-proofs their healing against incoming attacks, at least to some extent. This fact alone puts Nurse Aeleen in an elite company alongside Verica, Vixel, and the 2 Hildegards. But wait, there's more. Like all modern medicine, Medicinal Cure has several side effects, thankfully of the positive sort via the skill shift mechanic. Phase 2 adds a defense buff, and Phase 3 a strength buff. It's hard to ask for much more from a healer, even if this skill ends up being costly to charge as a result. It takes Aeleen exactly 4 full staff combos to get this out, and 6 full combos to use her 2nd skill. That 2nd skill is called Naturopathy, and it heals for a very large amount, but in a small radius around Aeleen. This skill also cleanses stun, making Nurse Aeleen an excellent candidate to take on Void Agni. Her natural stun res of 100% would also come in handy there. Remember though that she can still reach 100% burn res too from the Wyrmprint combo we talked about earlier, so HBH isn't off limits. In fact, her healing tends to surpass Thaniel's. She just can't cleanse burn, and it's harder for her to meet the HP check. But more on that when we talk builds. Aeleen's final 2 abilities are Skill Prep and United Haste. Both of these are, in principle, designed to help you get out her costly skills faster. Skill Prep certainly helps with this, although it only hits 75%. United Haste, meanwhile, is a new ability that grants her skill haste dependent on the number of teammates still alive. At the time of writing, the percentages on this ability are unknown, but have been reported as 2% for 1 teammate, 4% for 2 teammates, and 2% strangely for all 3 teammates alive. Apparently this is a bug, so presumably the amount for all teammates alive will end up being higher, say 6%. Even so, this is a marginal amount of skill haste for Aeleen. Her SP costs are already in exact multiples of the SP gained by full 5-hit staff combos. So skill haste on her mostly serves as a way to compensate for missed combos or for the natural dodging and movement that accompanies real battle. Now, let's discuss build ideas. If you have been holding out on building a healer for Hilda, then Nurse Aeleen may be right for you. I'll focus on building her with that goal in mind since I know this applies to many people. First, let's face facts when it comes to her dragon. If you only have Poliahu or Penglai, then honestly it's going to be easier for you to use Thaniel than to use Aeleen. While not impossible, you will need high facilities, a void weapon, and a lance or axe teammate to ensure your survival. Although Fjorms are rampant these days, I prefer to build without assuming others' co-abilities. Therefore, let's suppose you're working with Poseidon or High Mercury instead. Submerge is also excellent. I would also suggest, in general, only trying to use Nurse Aeleen for Hilda if you have both the Dragon Yada and Yule Tree facilities as well. From there, Endless Azure Core is the preferred weapon to ensure you live past the opening blast in Hilda. Its full HP equals defense is the main reason we want to use it, but it does add a bit more skill haste to Nurse Aeleen too. To use any other weapon like the 4-star Marine Staff with its extra heal, you will need much more investment into your facilities and Water Fafnir, or need both Axe and Lance teammates. For Wyrmprints, it's Beauty Secret and Fireside Gathering that make this whole build work versus HBH. If you're using Aeleen in another fight, then use Recovery Potency or Strength Wyrmprints on her instead. For instance, Bonds Between Worlds is perfect to top off her skill prep while boosting her strength. Finally, for teammates, Fjorm and Karina are among the best for Nurse Aeleen. Karina's first skill scales in damage for every buff she has, including HP regen and the other 2 buffs Aeleen grants. Meanwhile, Aeleen benefits from Karina's co-ability to ease her entry requirements. That said, Karina may want to run the same Wyrmprint set as Aeleen if the two are paired up, since Aeleen can't cleanse burn. Fjorm, meanwhile, also assists Aeleen thanks to her HP co-ability. HP also has the further benefit of increasing the amounts healed by Aeleen since it's factored into the healing formula. Meanwhile, one of the main benefits that Aeleen would provide to Fjorm besides buffs is that her healing is so plentiful. This could allow Fjorm to safely use her ice mirrors for additional damage and play a bit more aggressively overall. In the end, Nurse Aeleen is a terrific healer with potential even in a battle like Hilda where burn is a major issue. Thanks to the new Beauty Secret Wyrmprint, she can be geared out for that fight with fairly low investment, although I still think Thaniel is fine and much cheaper to build if you lack dragons. But let's move on to our next adventure for the day. This one has a raid up on the showcase, but he isn't exactly new. Of course, I'm talking about Mikoto, the 5-star Flame Blade Wielder who has been in the game since launch. Although many new Flame units have been released since his heyday, Mikoto remains a stellar attacker. His synergistic, critical-centric kit is extremely potent, even if he lacks the flash of Mim's dragon form, the absurd numbers on Cerese's brilliant bolt, or the team-wide mayhem of Marth. Mikoto still has the highest personal DPS of any Flame unit, and the highest strength of anyone in the permanent pool. When you consider that he also has the strength co-ability as a blade, his contribution to team DPS even starts to look favorable when compared to Cerese, and begins to approach Marth's. If you're looking to break into High Midgard Stormer for the first time, he would be an awesome pickup. His stun res of 100% and strength co-ability also make him well suited to the ongoing Nightmare raid. Mikoto's skills and abilities focus on 2 things: critical rate and looping through his primary skill. His first ability is HP of 70% equals critical rate of 10%, and his third ability is critical rate of 8%. So long as he's healthy, these together mean Mikoto has a constant critical rate of 20%, since he starts from a base of 2. Mikoto's two skills also synergize with one another. Kindled Heart increases his attack rate by 20% for 10 seconds. This refers to the speed at which he attacks, meaning it allows Mikoto to build combos and charge skills faster while it's active. This buff also applies even if Mikoto is transformed into a dragon. Interestingly, both this skill and Mikoto's first skill have exactly the same SP cost. Kindled Heart is particularly useful since quick skill use is essential for Mikoto's first skill, Ravenous Fire, to reach its full potential. Ravenous Fire deals damage and buffs Mikoto's strength and skill damage for a limited time with each use, after which his stance shifts to Flare, then to Ruin. These stances allow his Ravenous Fire to deal even more damage, but stance shifts only happen if the skill is used again in fast enough succession after the previous use. Thus, Mikoto's damage output is highest when he can repeatedly combo and use his skills unimpeded. Otherwise, the window to hit Ruin stance is fairly tight. There is one other Flame Blade, Aoi, but she's a 3-star with sleep res rather than stun res, so Mikoto certainly holds his own. Even though he's not the most unique unit these days, he's still one of the most powerful. He's also just really cool. Anyway, let's go ahead and move on to build ideas. For dragons, Mikoto certainly wants strength, ideally 60%. Cerberus edges out Agni as usual, but the comparison is likely closer on Mikoto than on most other adventurers. Agni performs very well under Mikoto's attack rate buff. As a lower investment alternative, just like with Serena, Ifrit should work fine. For weapons, Heaven's Acuity, the core 5-star Flame Blade, is the best option. Not only does it grant Mikoto the most stats, but it also gives him a powerful damage-dealing skill with a nice area of effect. The flame waves it shoots out are good for hitting multiple targets like both High Midgard Swarmer and a Golem. The cheaper to craft Sky Render is also an acceptable alternative, specifically against HMS. In terms of Wyrmprints, Mikoto can use a tried and true combination: Resounding Rendition plus Levin's Champion. For many adventurers, this combination is outdated, and Resounding Rendition plus Bonds Between Worlds performs better. But due to the critical rate in his base kit, this setup still works well for Mikoto. Since his HP is fairly low though, you might need to substitute in Flash of Genius to survive HMS's opening blast, depending on your facility levels, dragons, and teammates. Finally, speaking of teammates, I think Galissa Reese is one of the best allies for Mikoto. Her skill haste makes hitting his Ruin stance consistently much easier to do. I also like Marth thanks to his attack rate buff. This works well to further speed up Mikoto since Marth can repeatedly buff attack rate if he intentionally misses with his Fire Emblem in its final phase. That said, if a stun res Flame Dagger unit were available, however, they'd certainly receive a mention here just like they would have for Serena. Ultimately, Mikoto is very good at dealing damage, and you probably don't need me to tell you that, especially if you've played with him yourself. He can land monstrous criticals reliably thanks to his synergistic kit, and if his teammates are good at baiting the enemy, he can fire away unopposed. That said, Mikoto does have two weaknesses. One, his skills are fairly slow to charge, particularly before his attack rate buff gets going. And two, Mikoto has a steeper learning curve. Blades need to be spaced well to avoid stealing baits or missing the later hits of their combo. A good Mikoto is a true force to be reckoned with, but judging from what I've seen out there, it can take a while to reach that point. Alright, and that brings me to the final adventurer on this banner. She's new, yet old, yet young. Of course, I'm talking about student Maribelle. The original Maribelle was one of the best to launch 5 stars just like Mikoto. She's switched elements and outfits and even braided her hair, but ultimately retains many of the same properties, for instance, her beloved animal friends. Seriously though, just like before, she's a 5-star wand with a very high strength stat, 2 attacking skills, one of which debuffs defense, and the full HP equals skill damage of 40% ability. This time though, she's of the flame element, she's packing stun res instead of bog res, and she has broken punisher of 30% instead of skill prep of 100%. Her second skill also charges more slowly and deals damage around her instead of ahead. Simply put, Student Maribelle is a strong and straightforward unit. You don't need much more than multiple attacking skills, a skill damage passive, and a skill damage co-ability to do lots of damage. And honestly, there isn't much more to Maribelle than that. While playing with her, you want to try and ensure you remain at full HP, otherwise she will take a hit to her skill damage. This is easier in some quests than others. It shouldn't be that hard versus High Midgard Stormer, but likely would be tough in the current raid. Otherwise, her broken Punisher instead of skill prep isn't too bad of an exchange. It means less early damage for Student Maribelle and no instant defense debuff, so she loses her previous function as an immediate nuke for things like Void Battle speed clears. When it comes to building Student Maribelle, I'd suggest using a pure strength dragon like Cerberus or Prometheus. Kono Hanasakiya isn't quite as good on her since she already has so much skill damage to begin with. It's better to diversify her damage modifiers by including more strength and a modest amount of skill damage on her Wyrmprints. As usual, Ifrit is the backup choice. I do slightly prefer Prometheus to Cerberus here since Maribelle is ranged and has lower defense as a result. Prometheus allows her to survive the HMS HP check on any team while using Flash of Genius instead of Glorious Tempest. Cerberus needs Glorious Tempest or an Axe or Lance co-ability to guarantee Maribelle's survival. For weapons, the 5-star Terranigmus and 4-star Fire Fiend's Howl both have merit. Terranigmus is better for the endgame due to its sheer stats, and its healing is relevant on Maribelle since it can help her maintain full HP. Fire Fiend's Howl is better if Maribelle is a lower investment role player on your team, for instance during a raid. It has worse stats, but gives Maribelle a third, close-range attacking skill. As for Wyrmprints, I like Resounding Rendition plus Flash of Genius best on Maribelle, just like Serena. As mentioned before though, this may be tough to pull off depending on your co-ability and dragon situation. Fortunately, with the release of MIM, there are a lot more lances in pubs these days, but if you want to ensure your survival, you can always run Glorious Tempest versus High Midgard Swarmer instead. Finally, lots of teammates work well with Maribelle. Pretty much any unit with 2 or more attacking skills will benefit a lot from her co-ability, and this includes Vanessa and Mim. I mentioned those 2 in particular since their co-abilities will help Maribelle have an easier time surviving, princeless or not. Xuansong is another Great Lance teammate since her first skill deals extra damage to debuffed foes, which Student Maribelle can sometimes assist with, in the case of a rare miss from Xuansong's second skill. Ultimately, Maribelle is an extremely powerful unit. There's just not a whole lot to say about her because her design is so straightforward. She reminds me a lot of Kurin and the original Maribelle in that regard. She's an awesome pull if you get her, she's great for this raid to fill out your team, and it's fairly easy to maintain her full HP as a ranged character against High Midgard Swarmer. All of this makes for a very good unit. I've harped on High Midgard a lot in this video, and well, that's because it relates to my verdict on whether or not to pull. So let's finally get into that now. I think this showcase is worth considering primarily if you're still unable to clear High Midgard Swarmer, especially if the reason is because you lack dragons in order to do so. Picking up an Ifrit or 2 could help you out, and none of the 5-star dragons are bad here if you don't already have Mikoto. Even a random Konohana Sakuya could be an extra dragon for one of your DPS units in the current raid at the worst. If you are a more enfranchised player and aren't having any trouble with Nightmare Mode or HMS, then I would certainly skip, especially if you already have Mikoto. Despite this banner being full of cute units, we have some idea of what's coming up next thanks to a data mine. Assets show both a Dragon Special and a Dream Summon coming up, with the Dream Summon including art of Konohana Sakuya. That means everything here will likely be on the Dream Summon, which lets you pay for a tenfold and pick any unit or dragon of your choice on top of that. For that reason, it's definitely better to wait if you just plan to chase one of these units no matter the cost. The Dragon Special is also a high value summon for enfranchised players since access to stronger dragons is the main gatekeeper of endgame content. And then, of course, there's the prospect of a Summer Seasoner banner after all of this, which might be yet another reason to wait or skip, whether you're an enfranchised player or a newer one. All said, my ultimate verdict is to skip on this showcase. Since everything here is part of the normal summoning pool, you can always pick these new units up down the road, whether in a Dream Summon or a future Gala. Alright everyone, and at long last, that's going to do it for this video. I apologize for the length and delay in getting this out, but I hope you've enjoyed the analysis and conversation on this new banner. Of course, I'd love to hear what you think of the banner in the comments below, as well as whether or not you decided to pull. Otherwise, everyone, thank you so much for watching, take care, and I'll see you next time.